So today we're going to be learning about watercolor painting, and we're going to create a negative watercolor painting. In this watercolor painting, you can see that you have the lightest areas in the front and the things seem to go farther and farther back. You're going to use a template, which is a pattern that you cut out. Make sure that this template is something you can recognize from the outside, because you're not going to be doing any of the details inside. So I drew an acorn and I'm tracing it about 5 or 6 times on my paper and making sure that it goes off the paper. So I'm leaving plenty of space around it. After I trace the template, I'm going to tape my paper down, and I'm using what's called washi tape, but you can use masking tape. Just don't use Scotch tape because it pulls up the paper. The tape also helps the paper from buckling. Now I'm going to get out my watercolors, a can of water, and a paper towel. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wash out my brush. There's some black in my brush where somebody left black. Might have been me. Now I'm going to paint my paper with just water. And this is going to give a beautiful soft look to my watercolors. You don't do this every time. And you paint it very soft. You don't grind the brush, you don't smash the brush, and you don't dig out the paint. You fill the paint wells with water, and then you gently brush on the paint with the tip or the middle of the brush. So here I am, I've painted all over, and it almost has a tie-dye look. I can add a little more, and you can see that the paint was very shiny and light. I'm using a hair dryer here to show you that you can dry the paper, but it has to be bone dry before you add any more layers. So now what I've done was now that I have my first layer, I'm going to paint around it with an analogous color, which for me is orange. So I'm going with yellow, and then I'm going with the neighbor on the color wheel, which is orange. And I'm painting a lot of water in my orange, but it's still a little bit darker. Okay, so it's still very watery, but it's a darker color. I'm tracing very carefully around the edges and filling in the blank spaces a lot more quickly. And please remember that my video is sped up about 4 times, so it will not go this fast. And it takes about 15 minutes between coats if you do not have a hair dryer. So this might take you a couple of days to complete, or an afternoon. So here I am filling in all the negative space and leaving the acorn shapes. You can tell it's an acorn. I'm filling it in, making sure I'm using plenty of water. If my paper isn't dry enough, then my pencil would dig into the paper, and my paint would combine with each other. So you can keep a nice crisp edge by making sure your paper is very dry when you draw and paint on it. In the video, I had waited between coats. So now I'm using the orange again, and I'm not using quite as much water. So even though it's still transparent, like a nice watercolor, it's a little bit darker. So I'm painting in the negative space, and that's why it's called negative painting, between all of the pieces. So here I am carefully outlining each part and painting more quickly in the open spaces. And you can already see it seems like a pile or acorns behind other acorns. And you can use this if you ever want to create like leaves or foliage. So now I'm going to let it dry. I've let it dry for about 15 minutes. I had come back to it, and now I'm tracing the acorn again. It is very dry. I have paused the video, that's how I got it that dry. And now I'm painting a reddish orange in between the spaces. And those are really small areas. So I'm really just using the tip of my brush and I'm painting in very small parts of the painting. And you can keep going depending on what, how dark you want it. I'm going to leave it like this. I could go in with even a brown after this if I wanted to, but I think I just left it this way. So after it's all dry, you can take off the tape and you'll sign it right at the bottom.